Good. All right. All right. So I'm gonna try to talk loud. I know. So thank you all for coming today. As everyone in person knows, and hopefully people online know, that we tested out a new venue today, and so we had a couple of hiccups. So hopefully the background noise isn't too bad for everyone, and we can all still enjoy ourselves and enjoy a good program today. So just apologize to those online that had to wait a little bit. But we got started about 20 minutes late. So thank you all. I'd like to start off just by doing quick introductions like we always do. And unfortunately, probably people online are probably not going to be able to hear the intro, so we'll just start off with Rick. You want to introduce yourself, please?
Rick Helper, AACE Consulting.
Thank you. Board member. Scott.
Scott Barden, treasurer. Yeah, we're, like I said, we're going around the room and introductions.
Phil Bono, board member. Jeff Crumble, national construction, and I'm on a tech board.
Nice.
Alex Shaw, ACM.
Yep.
And Ross, ACM. Jeff Miller, Mark. Fred, civilian.
All right, and I'm Jason Marentet, president of the section. So just a couple quick notes I'm going to talk about before we get quickly into the program. One success we had recently was we had a golf social just a few days ago on Sunday, and we had decent attendance, and I think it's something we're going to try to keep try to keep as an annual thing on the schedule. The attendees that came seemed to have a good time, and so we're going to try to keep it up. Probably have it a little bit maybe earlier in the summer next year, and try to make it a little, plan it a little bit earlier so that more maybe can attend. But if you're a golfer, and we'd love to have you out, and just fun, casual golf outing with some prizes. Next thing I want to talk about is if we bring this up every year, but if you have any ideas of a topic that you would like us to present on, feel free to suggest any ideas. We're open to anything. Doesn't necessarily mean that you have to speak on it. If you want to speak on it and you have a topic that you would like to speak on, we are open to that too. But we're open to topics too. If you find a topic that you're interested in and it seems like something good, we will try our best to find a speaker that can speak on it as well. So for this year, we are mostly booked. I mean, for the rest for the year, we're gonna try to get the full program out in the next few weeks. But we have a lot of it already all set, so that's a good more head start than I feel like we usually have at this point in the years. But either way, things fall out, and we're always open to new ideas. So that's great. My last item that I want to bring up is that we do have a new website. I don't know if people clicked on it at all from the flyer that we had sent out, but it's connected now through the national site, and we have a community now in there. So if you are a member of that community, and I feel that everyone that's a member of our section is automatically a member of the community on our website. So if we start a discussion on there, you will automatically get notified on things like that. So we're going to try to get a little bit more interaction on our site. And so if you are not getting it and you want to be a part of the community, and if you're not a section member, you can go to our section and sign up to be a part of the community as well. So, but we're going to try to make it easy for when we have new attendees. We're going to send an email out to that new attendee and teach them how to join our community, so that it's super easy and not hard. So with that being said, I think I'm going to get to the program. So I have the honor of introducing Rick Helper, who I got to see him present at our Atlanta conference and expo this year. He's doing, I believe, some sort of combination of different presentations he'd made in the past at National, and so very excited to hear it. He is a PSP and a PMP, more than 40 years experience in our industry, and he's been attending our meetings for years. So thank you, Rick, for presenting, and here you go. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, hold your applause till the end. You may regret it. Well, thanks for inviting me to speak. This is a topic that I'm really passionate about. Like most of you, I came up the route doing cost, schedule, worked my way into project management, and I got assigned to a kind of an initiative from our CEO when I was working with Aker Werner back around 2003. And at the time, Aker Werner was a global EPC company in the oil and gas industry, based out of Norway. So they did offshore drilling platforms, subsea, ships, a variety of things. Plus, they own some businesses, landside in North America, which is where I fit in. And so I reported out of Houston. So anyway, I was on a committee of about 7 of us from around the world, charged to putting together, it's a stage gate system. We called it a project execution model. Basically, it's a template. And the purpose was to do a deep dive into projects as to why they failed, figure out what went well, what didn't go well, keep what went well, get rid of what didn't go well, obviously, and try to build a repeatable model. So what I'm going to kind of talk to you guys tonight about is this. It's a stage gate system, and since I've left Werner, so I left Werner in 2007, and I've been on my own as a consultant since then, and mostly working for owner companies. And probably in the last few years, I've had a chance to work with a lot of renewable companies that are really very lost on how to actually develop and do front-end planning on projects as well as execute them. So I've kind of expanded this to create an owner module, and I'm going to go through that. So this is, as mentioned, I presented my first time in 2016 in Toronto. I did 2021 remotely because we were in COVID, and then just this year in Atlanta. And just all variations on stage gates. And let me go ahead and get into it here. So, an $80 clicker doesn't work. Well, let's see if this does. Even the computer doesn't work. Let's try this. Okay, so just enough about me, but the 3 tracks that I've done for AACE are listed here, and I'll make this presentation available. So I got 119 slides, so we got to cruise fast. So you guys are going to be drinking out of a fire hose, but good news is if you're interested, there's more information available. If you're not, the boredom will pass quickly. All right, so PM 4332, that's the one I just did down in Atlanta. And I think you find as you get older, I rail against software. I love them as tools, but I really have a hard time when software manufacturers try to come up with software that replaces people, thinking, and process. So the abstract really for this first one was, if you did a Google search on a stage gate system, you're going to find very little. It's like, even to this day, have you ever Googled work breakdown structure, WBS? You find the simple Corps of Engineer outline that we find for the last 40 years. It gives you an overview of it, but you can't really use it. So same thing with these stage gates. What we start seeing now is software companies are coming up with systems, very generic, to capture gates and stage gate requirements, but they just don't go deep enough to find the problems in projects and get you on the right track. So we're going to talk about that. And then TCM 3747, that's the one I did 3 years ago. So that was better project controls through better project execution. So I'm going to kind of show you using some piping examples as to how stage gating can really improve your reliability of forecasting as a project controls person. And then 2337, the one that started it all, we did up in Toronto. At the time I was working with Matrix Service, their CEO used to be a vice president that I worked with at Aker Werner. So Matrix is an above ground storage solution company out of Tulsa. They do tanks. But when the CEO got there, he wanted to grow them into a full EPC contractor to do oil terminals and related projects. But he knew enough from Aker Kværner to know you just don't get into it and then figure it out. So went out there, spent a couple of years with them, underpinning work processes, getting them prepped and primed, ready to get off on the good foot. So 4-3-3-2. All right. So what I did was I wanted to challenge whether stage gate. First of all, let me just a straw poll. Anybody in here use stage gates? Or are you familiar with them? Okay. You love them, hate them, do anything for you? Okay.
They're more like guidelines than actual processes.
Yeah, that's the problem. Okay, so we're going to challenge whether the stage gate process produces the result, because there's kind of some chatter out there that, hey, these things aren't the greatest thing since sliced bread. After all, what's next? But it's a systematic approach to developing a product or project. I would tell you, I feel very strongly, if it's done right, it can vastly improve your project outcomes, both predictability, consistency, as well as the actual results. And again, just like the WBS example, a little free information available. So I'm here for free. So stage gate process, it's a sequence step to making decisions. So what I think is really cool is, again, I've been doing stage gating since 2003-ish. And when I started researching to do this paper for Atlanta, I said, I wonder where this stuff really came from. And how ironic that one of the earliest vestiges of it was our own AACE publication from 1958, which is today 18R 97. Okay? Now, how cool is that? So this Dr. Robert Cooper gets a lot of kudos. He started doing this in the automotive industry and expanded it to products. And for the owner, his premise for doing stage gates was he wanted to be able to kill off projects with a minimum amount of time and resources. But he took it from an owner's perspective, where you had capital funds and you had lots of options to spend your capital funds on. That typically is not a scenario we work with in our industry. But be that as it may, that's how he started. So what he do, he broke the project down into stages. You got to pass these gates to get through the stage, otherwise it dies. Objectives have to be met, requirements, whatever. And another not so subtle nuance is the gates reviews should be done by somebody that's not on the project team, so that they're not emotionally or unduly influenced. Again, original purpose was to kill projects. However, in capital projects, the decision is usually made to do it. So now what we want to do is make sure we do it right. So I'm going to start out with, for an owner process, a graphic I got off the internet, free, very generic. They show 5 stages, but if you look, one stage to execute the project and then a stage to operate it. Well, by the time you get to operating, the ship has sailed. So, again, this is just a graphic. This is why I rail. You don't find much out there for free. Another trade group that I'm a big fan of is CII. Back in 2006, they released 213.1 front end. Break the rules, pay the price, and is basically an advocate for do front end planning, right? The little bit of money you spend on the front end is going to save you a lot of headaches and money on the back end. So if you take the CII publication, the big picture requirements to get through their gates and how they named them, they line up pretty nicely with these first 3 stage gates in this graphic that I'm showing. So all I've done is gone through and used my own fancy little system. I call the phase development, and the yellow chevrons are stages. The magenta diamonds are the gates. And what I'm showing here now is front-end planning, which is what most of us do in the contracting and consulting side. And I'm trying to align it up. And the reason I did this was because I've recently, the last few years, got involved, as I said, starting to help some renewable owners figure out how to do projects, and a little bit like herding cats. But what you want to do is get those guys heading down a path, and rather than do something unique and on their own, my goal was to line them up with what we already know in front-end planning, between AACE and CII. So that's what this graphic kind of shows. Just another example. This is just another renewables company I'm working for. So they didn't want to call it all development and assess. They do pre-development and prospecting pipeline. Point being, you can be resilient with this stuff and still get to the promised land, okay? And what we're showing here is from the owner's perspective. So, profound concept. From the owner's perspective, what happens in development is where you create and add value, right? They make all the decisions. Why are they doing this? We're turning a business problem into an engineered solution. Okay, well, there's different options. So they make the decisions. They're the best party for determining what creates the best value for them. As a front-end planning consultant, we do the heavy lifting on the technical side and we advise, but it's their decisions to make. Usually on complicated projects, especially where they're buying technology, they have to outsource. So that's what we're showing here. What we're showing here is just a list of, you could call them disciplines, they're really not. I call them key activities. Some call them swim lanes, but you can kind of grasp what the organization is. So this will become a vertical structure where the phases and the stage is become a horizontal structure for the environment. And again, just highlighting PE01 front-end planning just because it's outsourced, but it's the owner's responsibility. So now what I'm going to show you is kind of what it looks like from an EPC contractor's perspective. Much more complicated because we really have the risk. And there's just lots and lots and lots and lots of technical data that's got to be managed, okay? So from the EPC contractor's perspective, the proposal and tendering phase is where they add value because once they float that proposal, they're locked in. It only gets worse from there. So then the execution phases are where, you know, they have to maintain, and through constructability and some other good planning and decisions, maybe they can add some value to themselves as well as the client. But basically, hey, you know, for the owner, development is it. For the contractor, it's the proposal. You live with what you bought. So this slide here, now what I'm going to kind of do is expand on what I did at Caverner and kind of took and made it landside, North American, trying to adapt it to AACE, CII standard terminology and nomenclature so that we all can use it. So why do we do it at Caverner? Well, or what is it? It's just a knowledge base. All we're doing is taking what we know and putting it in a tangible media. I can tell you over 40 years, you can ask 10 engineers what should be on a P&ID and you'll get 12 answers, right? That's just wives' tales, you know? We all talk, hand wave, nobody has really spent the money. No, some companies have. It's a heavy lift to spend the money to make this into a tangible medium, okay? But that's what we endeavor to do. So the process includes, you know, gate reviews, which got to be cleared to for the project to progress. It's a collaboration tool because now we have a physical media we can share. And the idea is, you know, we can reflect CII, AAC best practices as we go. I would tell you in red here, this is key. It's a paradigm shift. It is from looking in the rearview mirror at data that we've collected to forecast to actually knowing the end at the beginning and planning for it. And we all say we do that with the schedule, but you're going to see this is much more robust than what you can really do in a schedule. For an enterprise, it absolutely requires executive management participation. I would tell you, Caverner, when we started doing it, the CEO insisted that compensation be tied to implementing and achieving results. So, you know, the pocketbook is real inspiration. It's the glue that holds things together. It's not a project controls tool, although it helps project controls, and it just simply, it is what we do. So why do we use it? And Project Navigator is just my trade name for stage gate system. So why do we use it? Consistent delivery, predictable outcomes, logical experience. It's even better than logical. It's based on best practices. So we'll get into it later. You can shortcut and cheat and so on, but when you do that, you're inducing risk. And what do we do at risk? We put it on the risk register and then we manage it. So we don't let process be an impediment, but we do want to manage. Okay, a very effective communication tool. As a contractor, you can lay all this out to an owner very powerful. Allows senior management a window into execute. They only want to see what they want to see anyway. So very competitive. It's a competitive tool if you have it too. So why use it? Expectations. It does focus on results, communications, integrated work processes. We're going to hammer that in a little bit. Continuous improvement. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Improved productivity, and obviously enhanced risk management. Okay, and supports commercial compliance. So I showed you those 8 key activities for the developer before. So now from the contractor side, we take a project and we split it into 2 halves. Project execution, that's what you're going to leave out on the project site when you're gone. Project management is what you do to make it happen and manage it from start to finish. So you see key activities, you start to get into 5, 6, 7, and 8. Those are all the activities that we know and love dearly here. Again, just a reminder, front-end planning management happens during the development phase. And these are the execution phases. So, a stage gate process, components it should have. You look on the web, you're going to see the stages, ambiguous as they are. You're going to see some requirements that are very ambiguous. I cut them out. One of them that I used in my presentation in Atlanta was, by the time you get to capital authorization, have a scope, an execution estimate, and a schedule. Well, what do you do with that? I mean, no kidding, right? So we get there. So what I'm showing, we look at this control level and execution level. Just very briefly, control level is if you're in an enterprise and you got divisions all over the world. That's how the executives look at everything at the control level. So we align our different projects to the control level so that they all say the same thing at the same time, but the working class folks and the processes and the idiosyncrasies of the individual projects can be accounted for at the execution level. So we're going to really look at process maps. The green squares in the process maps are the process diagrams. We're going to look at them. And then the green rectangles in the process diagrams have activity descriptions. We're going to look at them. The RACE performance things, that's an accessory. We can add it later. We'll come back to the checklists as we're rounding this out. So, process map. This is the heart of it. So we talked a little bit about what you find on the web. You find the stages and you find the milestone requirements. And the milestone requirements are really what you're finding up in what we're calling the stage gate requirements. They're just big picture things that you gotta click, okay? But the devil's in the details. So what the map now is at the execution level, this is what you do. And it's by discipline, and it's, as you can see, process diagrams are actually placed very strategically within their key activities and within stages to support the milestone requirements, okay? So your work processes, and just a little side note, the ones that are in the green, those are project execution ones. Those are what show up in the P6 schedule for me. Project management, you can do project management in P6, that's fine. In a WBS in P6, I'd put it someplace elsewhere. But that's just the color code. So I've really spent a lot of time color coding and consistency and so on. Big fan of WBS. The work breakdown structure for me is the cornerstone of an EPC project. Everything emanates from it. Communication, obviously your structure, your processes, your reporting, quantities, costing, all that. It's commissioning. It's all WBS. So I spent a lot of time early on coming up with a work breakdown structure that has some consistency from engineering through procurement, through construction, commissioning. It's not perfect, but it's about as good as I can think to get it. So what we're going to show here is this is just a blow up of a process map, and it's a development one. And then the red ellipse is what we're going to talk about next. So it's got a WBS account. It's D for development, DVO1, development management, and it's just .1 because it's the first process. And it'll have a dash DEV1 to indicate the stage gate it needs to be done. And then we're going to talk about a couple more, a financial model, and again, just to use them as examples. So what the work process is, a graphical depiction of a process. All work processes are shown on the process map. WBS, they're the fundamental component. We want to support them with industry standards like AACE Class 3 estimates. And I don't know if it's coincidence or just worked out, but RP 18R97 just turned up in every one of my 3 presentations. So you integrate your governance, policies, procedures, checklists. You reduce checklists now to an audit document where, again, on the internet, you look at a stage gate, you got milestone requirements, and then the checklist is really a working document to make sure you do. It's just not granular enough. So the warning here is if your stage gate process isn't delivering better results, it may not be robust enough. This is a depiction of a work process, and the tan boxes are just the actual work process that's on the map. The home plate shapes are inputs required. The other blue boxes are, in the case of like development management, what this should indicate to you is we take some inputs, we do something, and then, oh yeah, we got these other 2, 4, 6 processes that got to get done. And when they're done, we take the outputs of those, come back, and we finish up what we're going to do with some inputs, and we have an output. Okay? And I call those boxes activities. So, just a detailed requirement for identifying whether a process meets the requirements for the information. So, this is an activity, and by the way, just an aside, everything I've done in Visio, Excel, PowerPoint, or Word, or a PDF document, that I've sketched. So, no software involved, and then in my world, I link it through hyperlinks on a SharePoint site, very graphical. So the point being is any one of you guys, gals, can do this. It just takes a lot of time, but. So what the activity description is a piece of paper that goes with the process, and what I'm showing here is a blow up, this ellipse is development management. What do we do? Okay, well, a little nod to PMI. We issue a charter for the assessment stage. So before starting, the project development manager verifies that the project includes, and this is for renewables, market opportunity, if it's process or product mix capacity, interconnect capacity, location, and potential sites. Then you review corporate policies, identify deal killer T's and C's, review your business plan, make sure that this fits into what you're going to do. A few more things, you're going to hold kickoff meetings, publish minutes, hold weekly team meetings, publish minutes, actions list, project manager weekly report. Again, motherhood and apple pie. We'll get into some meat in a little bit. So at the end of it, what you're going to do is you're going to review everybody else's work. You're going to consolidate it and compile it into a stage gate report that the board is going to review to determine, is this a go or do we kill it? Okay, so just a quick table of contents of what's included. Now, this is really cool because you're going to find this on every activity description, and it's really important when you get into engineering. Okay, so it's basically an audit trail document, but what you're looking for is a responsible party to basically sign off and say you've checked and verified that you started this process with the required prerequisites, you cooked it according to the recipe, and you verified that the cake is good, and you're signing off that it meets the requirements, goes into the file for the stage gate review. So we're not waiting until the end of the stage to figure out, if people did their job or not. Okay, another one. I'll skim through this. This is just one for financial. So this is for building the business model. This is what they have to do. LDs, penalties, CapEx, Class 5 estimates, so they got to have that. Class 5 schedule, they got to have that in front of them. They got to have their internal CapEx, OpEx type stuff. Same thing again. This is just a format for a business model. 5-year plan, 10-year plan. amortization, depreciation, ROI, all that good stuff. Development management later in the development. Same thing, you're going to issue a charter. Now you're going to put everything together, getting ready to go to the board for authorization. Again, here's the sign off. Did you use the inputs? Did you cook it with the recipe? Did you bake the cake properly? Checklists. Itemization of requirements completed at the end of a stage gate. They validate the work was done, and a lot of times you're validating the validation, so that's good. This is just a sample of, what we do, like for development management, and this is Dev 1, so very early on. The project manager is responsible for making sure the governance is adhered to. Core capabilities and strategies, which is, do we have the people to do what we're intending to do, and can we actually do it? Once the external team goes through all the checklists and transfers the deficiencies to a punch list, a list, and they get graded. Some of them are really big. If you missed something or you did something horribly wrong, you didn't meet a milestone objective, that's a red flag. If you got things that are pretty serious that need, some remediation, we call those corrective action, and then of course punch lists. So because we have all these key activities, which you saw those tan boxes earlier, we aggregate our deficiencies by the same type of things and come up. And I would tell you, for a stage gate, hey, one red is a fail. Now, does it mean this job stops? No, it doesn't mean the job stops. But it means the project team is probably going to get some help they really don't care to get. Okay, but that's the idea. So what I wanted to show in this presentation was, to the left is what you get on the internet, to the right is what you're missing. Okay, so if your stage gate isn't giving you nirvana, you got to drill down and you got to spend the time with these processes. And I could really speak for a whole day on those, but I won't. Just a recap of what we've already. So we talked about process maps, diagrams, activity descriptions. Now I'm going to go into the next one, the better project control. And this is really focusing now on getting into some really minutia. And what this paper railed against is, a high percentage of of literature you read from AACE opens up. How's it usually start? Well, you know what? More and more projects fail. In spite of everything we know and all this, more and more projects don't meet their objectives. Well, why is that? Okay, well, so I would tell you, I'm not sure it's necessarily a software thing, because I go back to when I started, I had anybody remember an AT class PC? Big box, CRT monitor, keyboard, Excel, Lotus 1, 2, 3. All right, then we got Windows client server stuff, okay? Then we get into .NET. We got databases. We got everybody talking to everybody, but yet every paper starts out with projects are still bad. Why? Okay, so I think some of it is just not starting out driving clarity of technical data that we need to get. Okay, so the red bullets here: accuracy of data is determined on drawings. Reliability is qualitatively determined by adherence to processes. And I'm going to show you what I mean. Again, I talked a little bit before about, you ask 10 engineers what should be on a P&ID, you'll get 12 answers, right? So, and again, I keep pushing this change in paradigm from reactive to proactive. And in perspective, this one was from an EPC contractor's perspective. So, key to EPC, because it's engineering is procurement dependent, is basically process equipment, balance of plant equipment, a very defined critical path from start to finish. So what we have to do is we have to come up with some definitions for our equipment, and I've come up with first, second, third priority, and then we have some information submittals. So for each of my information submittals, I have 5 packages: first, frozen, fab, shipping, and final. It's a lot better than preliminary and certified. priority, this is the equipment that drives your process. If you're doing a power plant, it's your STs, it's your CTs. If you're doing in our case, a fertilizer plant, it's the crystallizers. We can go on, but you guys get the idea. These are what drive your PFDs. It's equipment that is uniquely specified for your particular process. Okay, made for you especially. Second priority equipment, BOP, is the stuff that's spec'd after you got this stuff nailed. Now, I also would lump some and it requires engineering. It's semi-custom. It could be off the shelf, but you can't spec it until you've done your first priority equipment. Okay. Supplier information. Just a catalog of bullets here. So when I do a PO, I actually, give this to the equipment suppliers that this is what you have to get, and these are your parameters. And the X is stipulated. So weight and COG within 10%, bending moment, 5-10% type of thing. Because the problem becomes when you start blocking out space and you start figuring out power requirements and fluids and things like that you need for this big stuff, these guys can't be wrong. If they're wrong, you got to go all the way back to the beginning and do everything again. So you got to tie their tail, and commercially, you got to do this in the order, and you got to tie them to it commercially, that if you get outside your backyard here, your fence, you got damages to pay. Frozen supplier information. This is the last submittal the facility engineer needs to carry on then with the facility design. Everything after that then becomes fabricate shop, their parts drawings, whatever they got to do to make their equipment, okay? But this is where it ends for the facility. This puts the spotlight back on the engineer now to get her done, okay? This is just a graphical representation for first, second, third priority equipment. Your first frozen fab, so on your information, kind of ties it to the stages when you need it done. Should come as no surprise. You need first information from your first tier suppliers first, right? Because you got to spec your second guys off of it. You want your frozen stuff done before you buy into completely into your second tier guys, or we all go back to the beginning, okay? But your second tier guys then get done, and then the third stuff is typically off the shelf stuff that can't hurt you too bad. Okay, so we're going to focus on engineering procurement. So again, your design packages, when I do EPC contracts, I give the engineer a catalog of engineering packages that I want them to produce. It's not we wait for them to tell us what they're going to give us and when they're going to give us. As EPC contractor, we're driving the bus, okay? And we know what we want. We know what contractors need. And as an owner, I know what I want for record, okay? So I stipulate specs and drawing packages. And again, you got to be clear, have robust definitions. Table 3 and this, got to remember, I did this years ago. So this is the 2016 18R97. It's gone through an iteration since then. So, and I would tell you, I take a little umbrage with preliminary, defined, preliminary and start and complete. I don't know what those mean. Hammer that a little bit. Here's the next one, 2020. Improved some. They've got more granularity in the deliverables, which is good. I'd like to see a little more robustness in what we call the things in the boxes. I don't like preliminary. I hate that word. But here's just a mapping of 2016 to 2020, and the red arrows just show you how expanded it is. So, AACE is learning as they go. So, does complete mean the same thing to everybody? Okay. So this is just kind of an excerpt of the process map, and what I want to show you here is kind of a little iteration between engineers and suppliers. So the purple phase there, front-end planning, and what we're looking at here is PFDs that then go into P&IDs, You'll finalize your PFDs, and really all you should be doing, unless an owner has made changes, in the engineering stage, all you're doing is finalizing what you actually did in FEP3, okay? So, but for owner changes, it's the same, okay? And P&IDs come from PFDs. After P&IDs, now we're getting into lists and so on and so forth, which eventually free us up. We get to P&IDs in the second stage. Now we can start routing pipe, okay? So this is a process diagram for P&ID, and this is an EPC2, so this is the red one. This is after the first iteration. So now where are we at? Well, we got our frozen information from your first priority guide, which again are those home plates up there on the left, and then you got first information from the BOP guys. Okay, so that enhances. So the only thing on a P&ID that moves it along is more vendor information, right? When you start with them, your technology provider gets you started. Everything else then is a dotted black box that you got to plug in after the fact. So it's whatever your cooling tower guy is. He may be a little, brand A and brand B are a little different. Not big time, but enough that you formally plug them in. Then you got your outputs, which are your lists. All right. Here's your activity description for a P&ID, and we're going to get into it in a little bit. Let's keep moving though. So now what I'm going to show you is P&IDs in the third gate. So now you don't see first priority equipment anymore because we're past that. Now all you're doing is finaling up with frozen information from the BOP supplier. And you're essentially done except for drains, and if you want to put settings and alarms and whatever on, that's up to you. Activity description, and again at the bottom, the lead engineer is signing off that you did the right thing. This is now a piping design. So process engineering goes through the stage gates. Detailed design is where you're actually getting ready to issue, you're developing construction documents. And I do each of them in 4 iterations. Issued for concept, interdiscipline check, issued for approval, issued for construction. So issued for concept is pretty much that. If it's a foundation, you got some sizes, you got maybe some initial rebar stuff. You don't have a lot of details, overall dimensions. Piping, you're basically just going to reflect first priority equipment. But what you're trying to get in here is that first round of equipment, get into a 3D model, and then you want it to go through a constructability review. So what you're looking for here is making sure that the quantities you budgeted for, you're still adhering to. And obviously anything you can fix or improve is money in the bank. Activity description, and again, in hindsight, I wish I'd have blown these up more, but it's so what we're saying for an let me go back to P&ID for EP3. So we say things like design piping and instrument diagrams for WBS level 4 issued for design for a package that meets the requirements of EPC3. But then we go down into it, and you see down the first box, the input boxes and the output boxes. These are the other things that you got to have developed to that stage, that quality of information, in order for you to do what you got to do. All right. I know you're drinking through a fire hose here. So we do the same thing for all the disciplines. Issue for concept, interdisciplinary check, issue for approval, so on. So when we say complete, so here's my definition of complete for a piping discipline job, okay? Piping design started after frozen information. Equipment the layout has to be frozen. The layout reflects frozen second priority equipment. It reflects constructability review. Interdiscipline checking has been resolved to resolve crashes. Hanger support details, valves, fittings checked. Dimensions checked. Comments from stakeholders reflected that are approved. Design work signed off by the lead engineer. Independently audited. That to me is complete. Okay? So when you do that as a project controls person, when somebody comes to you on the schedule and says their activity is done, 50% done, whatever it is, if you work at a company where these processes are defined, they come to you and they say this is done, and assuming they're following recipe, you have a much higher degree of confidence that the information they've given you really means what they say it means, okay? That's the long story short. So as project controls people, you actually become much more educated in what design engineering really is and what procurement really is. So, you know, the old, we're all in this together. We're all in this together. Sitting in the room at the P6 schedule or, you know, with the budget and so on, it's not good enough. We got to have a lot more data and information. So I didn't really do it justice, but so I'm going to go. This is the first one, and again, this is when I was with Matrix. CEO used to be a VP at Kverner. He wanted He wanted this implemented before he set out to bite off a bunch of risk he really didn't want to take. It's easy when this is done once, cloning it and adapting it, right? So anyway, this is what they wanted to do. He was a real fan of the industry groups like AACES and CII. He wanted to be best in breed, so we set out. So what did we do? How do we do that? How do we get all this literature into our processes? At the time, this is 8 years ago, 75 RPs. What are we up to now? Over 100. Okay? And a lot of those 75 have been revised once or twice since then. Okay? Practice guides.
136 so far.
Okay? CII has 700 publications. They're up, although I say the best, they haven't done much great in the last few years. PMBOK, you know, a little bit there. But there's a lot of information, and a lot of people struggle with how do we do lessons learned? Oh, create a database. Tell the project manager to review the lessons learned database. So again, Matrix formed in '84, initially a tank company, wanted to grow their capabilities and their offerings. World class. Okay. So motherhood and apple pie. But here's where I want to get to. So what we did was we took all the CII publications, put them in an Excel table, and we mapped them to our key activities and which stage they're really applicable in. It was just donkey work, okay? And the same thing with the, so here's, this is AACE, so 18R97, 27R03, two of my favorites, right? Okay, well, they apply in PMO1, which is front-end planning, and PMO6, which is cost estimating. Schedule classification, PMO1, front-end planning, scheduling and planning, okay? CII, this is just an excerpt of, we did the same thing. Grabbed all their pubs. So we went through 18R97, what's it all about? So for us, we mapped the class 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to our stages. So again, you saw this earlier. We basically did something a little bit more granular than that. So instead of the complete started, you saw what I did in the previous slide, how we tied to equipment and layouts and so on and so forth. It's just got much more teeth to it. And then we just showed, here's the front-end planning activity or workflow diagram. So we're showing our class, this is what, FEP3, so this would be a class 4 estimate that we use to bring up to a class 3, and then the class 3 schedule we bring in, okay? And that's what we do before authorization. So just the fact that the diamond is there, now we can go to our checklist, our process tells us, hey, use a 18R93, 25R, whatever it was, and then the checklist comes around again for a second bite at the apple. Did you use this? Did you do this? Right. This was a lot. But I guess the point that I would leave you with is, I think stage gating, I mean, hey, I just turned 65. I'm as passionate about this stuff as I was, Project Excellence 30 some years ago. It's just always trying to do a better job. And to me, this is it. It really is. And it doesn't diminish what you do in scheduling or costing. It all works together. It's a risk management, a risk mitigation tool. It's a quality assessment program. It's a communications and collaborations tool. It's a lot of things.
How do you manage exceptions when it comes to a stage gate process like this? In regards to building a stage gate that's dynamic enough to accommodate exceptions versus just saying that's not a real exception, we're not going to do it.
So it's governance, that's corporate, policy. So what we did was, rather than deal with all these exceptions, we built a best practice system. In other words, if nobody was tinkering with it, and you used the industry standards and logically you built information on previous information, we built a best practice model, okay? Now, does an industry or company get into a situation where, hey, especially these renewable guys, that look, we have an opportunity here, okay, well, we got to roll the dice on an interconnect. We don't have a PPA or something, but we feel pretty good, we got to go. So what they do then is, we look at what's the cost of going and blowing up and having to go back. It's a time, because obviously the nice thing about these maps is where you screw up, where you got to go back to, and to check everything from that point forward, okay? So, but you could put dollars to these activities and these risks, and you make educated decisions. I'm doing that right now with a group out of Asheville. We're actually putting dollars to these things so that they can make educated decisions. But to your point, there's nothing wrong with making shortcuts or decisions. But what you got to do is you got to understand the impacts of them. If they go right, they're great. If they go wrong, what do? And they go on the risk register so that you're managing them. So that's it. Now, having said that, you work with different companies that do different ways. In the beginning of a project, you can all make some agreements to move some things around, not at the control level, but at the execution level. You can move some things around, and if everybody buys off on it, shake hands, and off you go. So it's a knowledge base. It's not. You don't create this for every job. So I have a slide. I thought I had a slide somewhere. I do somewhere where the nice thing about this is, as you build your knowledge base and you use it and find a better way to do it, hey man, you just go to the SharePoint site and you make your change in it, and it's live right now for everybody. So. Time for beer.
Any more questions for anyone? Any questions for anyone?
All right.
Thanks to those of you that attended online. We're going to wrap it up now, and thank you. I hope the noise wasn't too bad, and yeah, so thank you. Is that it? Yes, we were going to do that too. So thanks. Rick, we got to get a picture with my
points. Yeah, shake hands. Yeah, there we go.
So did you say